Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior, and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and do we have some hot, spicy, piping, and juicy news coming your way today via, yes, still reacting to John Lynch's NFL Combine press conference. Some more news came out last night. He also talked to Matt Mayoko on the 49ers Talk podcast. We'll react to that too on today's show, but Tim Kawakami came out this morning with a banger that revealed the San Francisco 49ers are seen as a top destination for not just one, but many top defensive linemen, either on the trade market or the free agency pool. But first, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, give us that 5-star review on the audio podcasting platforms, and let's dive into today's news. And I want to begin with that of Brock Purdy. Now, there isn't much to report when it comes to an update in regards to Brock Purdy's contract. We all know that they're in ongoing negotiations. John Lynch confirmed that yesterday at the NFL Combine. But if you didn't see the Niners Talk podcast with Matt Mayoko, John Lynch revealed that Brock Purdy's agent is at the NFL Combine, and he is quote-unquote sure they will meet up during this week to discuss a new contract. So it's not just texts and emails and phone calls. There is a face-to-face meeting seemingly scheduled between the San Francisco 49ers and Brock Purdy's agent to negotiate a brand new contract for the San Francisco 49ers quarterback. I love that. There's certainly urgency to get this thing done. You can tell when they're face-to-face, a lot of things can get done. San Francisco does their best work usually around the OTAs and training camp because their star players and their agents are there at Niners HQ face-to-face having meetings. It seems like those meetings are going to happen this year at the NFL Draft Combine to hopefully get things started quicker than usual when it comes to getting Brock Purdy signed to a new contract. But that was not the only quarterback-related news that John Lynch revealed last night on the podcast. John Lynch told Matt Mayoko that the team, quote-unquote, has a plan for the backup quarterback position. Now, what is that plan? I have no idea, but let's speculate here for a quick second, because I revealed my top 5 backup quarterback free agent options out there for the San Francisco 49ers. Among them was Joe Flacco, who San Francisco's already shown some interest in this offseason. I listed Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, 2 options that most fans, including myself, probably wouldn't like that much. But I also listed Jarrett Stidham, Broncos backup quarterback last year. But when John Lynch says he has a plan, it makes me think that they know that they have to insulate the room. They know they have to find I guess you can say a quarterback that can at least keep San Francisco afloat during the year. This team knows how important backup quarterbacks are. I'm of the opinion of Joe Flacco, Jarrett Stidham. Both those guys make a lot of sense. There is an obvious varying degree of upside and downside of both those quarterbacks. However, he did say that depending on what Brock Purdy's contract comes to be, whether it's $50 million, the predicted $57 million that Jared Goff got, if you account for inflation, that Brock Purdy will likely get this offseason. He said, whatever Brock Purdy gets, it will dictate what they can do at the backup quarterback position. So when I hear that, Brock Purdy's going to get paid relatively handsomely. So when you look at that, it kind of tells you they're going to have to go for cheap. I have a hard time believing people like Daniel Jones will sign for $6 million, right? You're looking for that Mitchell Trubisky kind of deal, hence why you look for former draft busts like Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, and again, your veterans like Joe Flacco and Jarrett Stidham. So a lot of what San Francisco does behind the scenes at the backup quarterback position are dependent on what they can do and how much Brock Purdy signs for this off-season. Niner media says, get it done, John. No Mac Jones, and please no Zach Wilson. Give me Taylor Heineke. Heineke feels like one of those quarterback 3 options, albeit, let's be honest here, the odds Kyle Shanahan trots out Brandon Allen again are probably pretty high, although you'd want to have a higher upside quarterback. There's a reason I think there were talks between Joe Flacco maybe coming to San Francisco this offseason, rumors earlier before the combine began. I think that's a pretty good idea as to where they may head. That like older veteran option, been there, done that, has some playoff experience just in case things don't get done. And so, again, what Brock Purdy signs for will dictate what they can do at the backup quarterback position. I do want to talk about the defensive line for a second, though, because a lot has been made as to how this team should go about fixing the roster, getting back to being a top contender in the NFC and hopefully for a Super Bowl. And a lot of the opinion that is shared is that you have to replenish the trenches, mainly the defensive line. You saw what Philadelphia did in the Super Bowl. They were like 4 or 5 guys deep. You had Davis, you had Johnson, you had Sweat, you had all these people out there that are just clogging up the inside and the outsides that were just so dangerous for Philadelphia. And John Lynch, when he was talking about the Super Bowl and how painful it was to watch that, he told Matt Mayoko last night that he felt the biggest difference in the Super Bowl was Philadelphia's defensive line. I think that right there, when you're a GM of a different team and you're seeing the archetype of how to win a Super Bowl, and this team knows this, they had that for a few years, 2019, 2021, and partially in 2022 as well, but they got to get back to being that team, having that depth on the defensive line. And hearing the GM say, watching Philadelphia's defensive line was, I think, the biggest difference in the Super Bowl, tells me everything I need to know with what the San Francisco 49ers are doing this offseason. There's been a lot of concerns of, will they go cornerback at pick 11? Will they spend big money on the offensive line or the secondary or linebacker? There seems to be these concerns as to San Francisco not getting it, that Lynch and Shanahan just don't understand what they're doing. I think right there is a big indicator that, yeah, they see what it takes to win. They know where they have to get back to, and kind of what the blueprint is to mimic and copy when it comes to being successful in the NFL. They're going defense. John Lynch pretty much said it last night on the Niners Talk podcast, which led us to this morning. Right about, 1 o'clock, 1:30 on the West Coast, Tim Kawakami of the San Francisco Standard, who has been one of the most plugged-in people as of recently with the San Francisco 49ers. He was the first to say that at pick 11, everything says they're going defense, which I firmly believe they will, barring some crazy change in the draft process, maybe a prospect falls or not. But he said they want to go defense. They're going defense. And this morning, today, right about noontime, he reports, and I quote here, the San Francisco 49ers are viewed as a popular destination for potential big-name defensive linemen who could become available via trade and or free agency. I'll read you the exact quote right now. I've heard from a few NFL sources that the Niners have been mentioned as a popular potential destination for at least a few top defensive linemen who have quietly started looking around should they get waived for salary saving or hit the trade market. I think there's a lot to dissect there. I think when you hear that One, these sources are not coming from inside San Francisco's building. That's really important to discern from other reports that may say San Francisco's, big fish hunting or big game hunting this offseason. The sources, Kawakami, if they were inside the building, he would say that. He has said that plenty of times. Sources inside the Niners HQ. He didn't say that here. These are outside the building sources saying the NFL views the San Francisco 49ers as potential destinations for some top-end trade candidates or free agents at the defensive line position. But I want to look at that last sentence or last part of the report he says, because he says here, at least a few defensive linemen who have quietly started looking around should they get waived for salary savings or hit the trade market. Now, I immediately hear that, and I say, I wonder who that erases from the equation, which may have already been far-fetched, but I think it immediately erases Myles Garrett. I know this morning he said he wants out. He's not going to sign an extension. However, the asking price will be so high to get Myles Garrett that I don't think San Francisco wants to spend, high-end draft capital or big money to go out there and get a player like Myles Garrett, who otherwise is worth the trade value he will get when it's all said and done. I also think it may erase that of Maxx Crosby. There's been mixed reporting as to what Maxx Crosby wants. I know earlier in the offseason, I was on it talking about that Maxx Crosby to San Francisco makes a lot of sense, and that was pre the hire of Pete Carroll. And you hear what, I guess you can say, reporters are fighting on at Starbucks is to decide if Tom Brady meeting with Matthew Stafford was on purpose or a happy coincidence at a ski lodge in Montana. The Raiders are going for it, per se. They want to get Matthew Stafford. They're probably going to try to keep Maxx Crosby. They want to get competitive really quickly here in the NFC West. They want to beat the Broncos. They feel like they aren't too far off, and you get Stafford, you keep Crosby, you hit in that top 10 of your draft. A lot can change really fast in the NFL. They're in a really good division, albeit, again, that a lot of things can change. Tom Brady won a lot of the Super Bowls, had a 10-year gap where he didn't win a single one. So there is a lot to look at and say, hey, the Raiders could be on the up and up. They have a good head coach. They have some good front office people in place, and you hope they can get something started there quickly in Las Vegas. So I don't think that means Maxx Crosby. However, there are three names I think this points to. If you want to talk about defensive line, the edge rushing group, I think there is three very obvious answers. One of them is probably going to be a free agent already. Khalil Mack makes a lot of sense for this team. He's older. He may want to retire, may not want to retire. There is some reports he may want to stay in Los Angeles. However, the Niners are trying to get him back in 2018. Things didn't go through with the Raiders via trade. So there have been previous connections to him. If Khalil Mack wants to play that mercenary role in San Francisco, try to get a ring, maybe be a little uncomfortable, albeit staying in San Francisco with Robert Saleh, a lot to like with maybe that connection there. But two names that are currently rostered on teams, I think, make the most sense in regards to what Kawakami is reporting here. Again, that last part of that sentence, top defensive linemen who have quietly started looking around should they get waived for salary saving or hit the trade market. So we're talking about players currently rostered with really high contracts that can save their team's money or maybe be on the trade market to maybe get something back for their teams. Two names come to mind. The first one, a very clear and obvious answer here, is Joey Bosa. Last year, the San Francisco 49ers tried to trade for Joey Bosa right around, I guess you can say, pre-draft time during free agency. Things didn't come to fruition. He goes back to the Chargers, which, again, now we're having the same conversation this year. May or may not get cut, a high cap hit. He may want to stay. We're not really sure exactly what he wants with the Los Angeles Chargers. I know Cheryl Bosa, the Bosa Bros' mother, have been talking about getting them to play together for 1 or 2 years. Joey's aging. The injuries are piling up, albeit was really good last year with the Chargers. Really good run defender. You talk about setting the edge. I think, and this was a main topic last year when the idea was broached of trading for Joey Bosa. With the injuries Joey Bosa has, San Francisco, yes, the fit's there. Nick Bosa's in San Francisco. Salah's in San Francisco again. The defensive line, they're trying to rebuild it, hence why you just put 2 and 2 together. It makes sense, albeit one of the bigger points I kind of talked about last offseason was when you have an edge rusher of Joey Bosa's nature, that is a high-end, top-of-the-line, boomer bust kind of player, with the fact that when he's healthy, he's phenomenal. When he's not healthy, which is unfortunately pretty common, you got to have some insulation. Well, San Francisco needs to find some more depth pieces. I think having Leonard Floyd as your number 3 guy to help alleviate Joey Bosa in case he gets hurt or keep him fresh goes a long way. Goes a really long way when it comes to keeping both Bosa bros on the field at the same time for the longevity of the NFL season. So I think Joey makes a lot of sense, albeit San Francisco. If you hear what John Lynch said yesterday, and we'll dive into more of it today, they want to get younger. You could argue Bosa doesn't make too much sense there. And if that's the case, I think you go to Cincinnati and you see Trey Hendrickson. He wants a brand new contract. They're talking about franchise tagging him, talking about trading him. It is a mess in regards to what the Bengals are going to do with Trey Hendrickson next year, or this offseason, excuse me. I really, really think that Trey Hendrickson really isn't that old. Drafted in 2017, 2019. Let me see here. Drafted in 2017, former third-round pick. Over the course of his career, dating back to 2017, started with the Saints. The last couple of years, 18 sacks. This past year in 2024, 20 sacks in 2023. The last couple of years with pressures. He had 83 pressures last year and 79 in 2023. There's a lot of things to like from Trey Hendrickson. He had 32 run stops last year and 30 run stops in 2023 as well. Excellent pass rusher. 4 consecutive years starting in 2021. He had a pass rushing grade at 86.9, basically 87 or above, in the last 2 years have been his best pass rushing outputs of his career. See if I can find his pass rushing win rate for you here really quickly, because again, he has been one of the best players in the NFL the last couple years at the edge rushing position. I think that when they have to go pay T. Higgins, when they're talking about, we don't have enough money, I think that there is an opportunity for San Francisco. Let's say Kawakami's right, and you see teams getting desperate. The Bengals don't have much cap space. They got to pay some people. They're talking about losing a lot of free agents this year. They fired the defensive coordinator. That may have pissed off Hendrickson. I get he may want a big time salary. However, San Francisco really shouldn't be. Really isn't a drawback to trade for Trey Hendrickson and say, hey, look, we'll give you a 2 or 3 year deal and call it a day. Albeit he may say no to that. But I think of the people on the market, the Bengals really, really, really feel like a team that needs some help. I think when you talk about being able to alleviate some pressure from the front office, Zach Taylor is kind of on his last legs there if they don't get things right. Hendrickson's only 30 years old, and he's a pretty young 30, just turned 30 in December. So you're not acquiring a 34-year-old Joey Bosa that has knee injuries and ankle injuries. Hendrickson has been pretty durable during his time. Last year he had 823 snaps. In 2023 he had 742 snaps. Has averaged over 730 snaps since 2021, and 2 of those years had over 800 snaps. So you're getting a really stout player. The run defense isn't too great. Doesn't draw you and say, oh wow, great run defender. However, last year was his best run defending grade since 2020. So you may argue that you get Trey Hendrickson in San Francisco next to Nick Bosa, you're really talking about this dynamic edge rushing group that San Francisco hasn't had in a long time. I also think that unlike Joey Bosa, say San Francisco acquires Trey Hendrickson, I do think that then you can start talking about trading Leonard Floyd away and freeing up some money elsewhere. You can talk about then extending guys and redoing contracts and whatnot. So I think getting Joey Bosa likely means keeping Leonard Floyd. Although I think getting Trey Hendrickson has a lot more upside, more durability, and it could lend you to the idea that you can trade Leonard Floyd, when it's all said and done, or you feel like, we don't need him anymore. He's rather redundant with Trey Hendrickson. And if you want to get younger, Hendrickson's younger than Floyd is. I think Floyd's 31, 32, albeit more expensive at this point in time. But you have the 11th overall pick. Hendrickson almost erases the need to go out there and draft an edge rusher in the first round. Maybe you go interior there, or gives you the luxury to go out there and do some more things. But, Hendrickson, again, really, really, really would do a lot for you. If the Bengals traded him before the draft, they'd save $14 million, right? The Bengals want to get that done, whether it's an extension or a trade. There is a lot to like of the idea of getting Trey Hendrickson. He'll fit here in San Francisco, and really would probably give San Francisco their best edge rushing group ever.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Now available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender-Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Under Kyle Shanahan. Now, you need some depth there, of course. They have 10 draft picks for a reason, but I think Hendrickson makes a lot of sense here. But Kawakami stating that this team may be big players according to the NFL. Like, when the NFL starts talking, it usually means that one of two things. Either the NFL is misreading what San Francisco wants to do, or the NFL is being a little more honest with themselves than San Francisco wants to be. San Francisco often plays coy, wants to keep things close to the vest. Although they do leak at times, you can tell that sometimes they're blowing smoke up your butt. And I don't think John was yesterday when talking about wanting to get younger. However, you get into the draft process, you start scouting these edge rushers, and you're like, you know what? None of these guys are who Hendrickson could be at number 11. If we get Trey, we can cut Leonard Floyd, trade Leonard Floyd, get a third or fifth round pick back, and we have 10 picks still, 11 picks still. We can still get younger. We can save some money in the process, lower his cap hit. I hate to say this, but San Francisco may have to cut some corners, get younger at linebacker, extend Warner, don't bring back Dre Greenlaw, don't go out there and re-sign Ufunga, maybe get younger at safety, and you look at the offensive line, get cheaper on the offensive line. That sounds crazy to say, but there is ways to look at this and say, there's a lot of, the great thing about this offseason thus far is that there's so many angles to go. San Francisco has so many options, but I do want to get to the YouTube chat here for a second. I see your questions, I see your comments, and I do want to get back to them. Kyle Juszczyk called it out pretty quickly. Bosa, Hendrickson, bang, he gets it right there. 49ers first takes. Aaron, what's up? Says, Cheryl Bosa is my home girl. Yes, Cheryl Bosa follows 49ers first takes on X or Twitter, whatever you call it now. Hey, carry that proudly, brother. That's a big thing. Joseph Ernberg says, no to Joey Bosa. I'll tell you this, Joseph, unfortunately, while you also say, yes, Trey Hendrickson, see, this is why I like Sterling. I like it too, Joseph. I do think Joey Bosa is a lot more likely than Trey Hendrickson in regards to who they acquire this offseason. So a lot of it comes down to money and pricing, and likely. I think Bosa makes a lot more sense because he'll probably get released compared to Hendrickson, who'll probably get traded. So in that case, Bosa makes a lot more sense. Keys says here that Hendricks wants to get paid. Niners love doing that. San Francisco does love the trade and sign. D Ford, one of the biggest examples of that. They trade for D Ford the same day. Boom. Contract is signed. I'm sure it was agreed upon before he got traded, but they love doing the good old sign and trade. So you never know. Albeit, again, I think Joey Bosa is probably going to be a San Francisco 49er if he is not a Los Angeles Charger in 2025. Moving along, staying on the defensive line, though. We got a Drake Jackson update yesterday that kind of came through late in the evening as more news was trickling through from John Lynch's press conference. And I'll tell you this now. It is a very, very, very depressing comment when it comes to Drake Jackson. Obviously, former second-round pick out of USC. He had the 3-sack game against the Pittsburgh Steelers to begin 2023. Then he hurt his quad, and things are never the same. We got this quote here, an update as to, he missed all of last season, missed most of 2023. We haven't seen Drake Jackson in 2 years now. And the hope was 2025, the big return, a contract year. Can he become something and actually contribute to this defense? And it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case this year as well, because according to John Lynch, it's been a tough injury, those quad tendon repairs, and that's why you got to really think long and hard before you have that surgery, because it doesn't make it go away. I guess Drake has had not setbacks, but just trouble coming back from the injury. It's not been the most encouraging thing. Hopefully it takes a turn for the positive, because we've seen Drake, when he's healthy, can be a real effective player for us. So we're crossing our fingers and putting in all the work as Drake tries to make that happen. So when you hear that, it very much seems like Drake Jackson is done again in 2025. Maybe he comes back late in the year, but you hear that, those couple things, not setbacks, but trouble coming back from the injury. It's not the most encouraging things. We hope, things take a turn for the positive. Those are all indicators for the odds you see Drake Jackson ever again in a Niners jersey are very, very slim, which sucks. Now, to be fair, anything you got from Drake Jackson was going to be a luxury and a cherry on top of the ice cream that you got, but I don't know the money off the top of my head, but I would really be shocked to see I would not be shocked to see Drake Jackson be maybe a release with an injury settlement during the offseason, because you may be talking about career-ending stuff from Drake Jackson. John Lynch revealed that Mike McGlinchey had a very similar injury, former right tackle for San Francisco, and he said that he believes McGlinchey still plays with pain. So this ain't going away. It seems serious, and for a freak athlete like Drake Jackson, who was once considered, according to Trent Williams, a all-pro body for a defensive end, it doesn't seem like he'll be back with the Niners in 2025, which sucks, really does suck. You'd want to see more from him, but it seems like Drake Jackson's time in San Francisco will be over, and the former second-round pick will go down as a draft bust, unfortunately, due to no fault of his own. We did get a Jordan Mason update, though. Going to the offense, I know a lot can be made in regards to, what to do, Christian McCaffrey's health, and, if he's healthy, he'll be great, but he's 28 years old. A lot of tread on those tires. You got to have some insulation. You like Grendo. Elijah Mitchell's probably going to be gone. He's a free agent. A lot of decisions have to be made at the running back position. Now, this year's draft class is extremely deep at running back. You have we're talking 6 rounds of real contributors at the running back position this year, which only should make Kyle Shanahan more happy and not draft a 3rd-round running back, albeit he has a hard time not doing that in the last few drafts or so. But we don't really know what's going to happen with Jordan Mason. They could, tender him, a 2nd-round tender, a 3rd-round tender. He's a restricted free agent this year, so they do have some exclusive rights with him. They can match any offer he gets, or they can not tender him at all, let him go out there, hit the market, and just say goodbye, thank you for your service. I don't think they will get a comp pick because he was an undrafted free agent a few years ago, so they're in a similar situation with how they were with Jawan Jennings a couple years back. When you have a contributor, you want to keep him. He's a good depth piece. You hope he can bloom into a real, whether it's a starter or number 2 guy like Jawan did in the last couple years. John Lynch said that Mason played really well, and there are going to be decisions to make. You can low tender him. He wasn't drafted, so you get nothing for him, and you don't match the offers. You can do a 2nd-round tender for him, which guarantees you're paying him $5 or $6 million next year for a 1-year deal, or You can come to the table, sit down, and get a deal done. I think San Francisco would want to do the latter with him. I doubt they want to pay a backup running back $6 million. Now, the thing about that, though, is that if you do give him that second-round tender and no other team signs him, okay, fine, on your books. If they do sign him, or if someone else goes to sign him, you get a second-round pick. Like, I think that we shouldn't overvalue Jordan Mason. I do think, yes, Mason was excellent last year, but the shoulder injury was very persistent throughout the entirety of the year. He got shut down late in the year because of it. I would not say I want to not bring him back, but I would be open to the idea of Jordan Mason not returning if you can get that second or third round pick, which again would be a luxury for a player who was undrafted a couple years ago and has turned into quite the player. I could see teams like the Cowboys, maybe the Bears, maybe on the off chance the Buffalo Bills. Like, there are some suitors out there. The Chargers make sense for Jordan Mason. But it does seem like a lot's up in the air. There is no concrete answer as to what to do with Jordan Mason. But I would not be shocked either way, whether he's here next year or he's not. I think there's a real possibility, although it sounded like the Niners want to keep him, they want to bring him back. I could see Jordan Mason playing elsewhere in 2025. But quickly, I want to let you know, if you want to see your San Francisco 49ers play, you want to go to a baseball game this summer, you want to watch the NBA live in person, or even go to a concert when the weather gets better during the summertime, go to SeatGeek.com and use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Keeping with the offensive conversation, we did get an update on Kyle Juszczyk's future with the San Francisco 49ers, which Juszczyk has been one of the more confusing. The way they've gone about his contracts have been really confusing, right? Kyle Juszczyk means a lot for this team. I know it's really hard for some fans, maybe even some people that cover the team, to understand the importance of Kyle Juszczyk on the offense. I get it, he's a fullback. It isn't a luxury position to about 25 other teams. Fullbacks are just unnecessary, and I get that. Although you are seeing a return of the ground and pound offense. You are seeing, this kind of, Saquon gets paid, Tony Pollard gets paid, Derrick Henry gets paid. You are seeing the return of higher paid running backs in last year's free agency, which does make a player like Juszczyk, I think, matter more to your offense. They very much view Kyle Juszczyk as their number 2 tight end, which has made them, although unfortunately here, not prioritize a backup tight end to George Kittle. I do think that the Niners value Kyle Juszczyk a ton. They see him as that kind of second quarterback on the offense. You have your actual quarterback in Brock Purdy. In previous years, you had your center, Alex Mack, who was super smart. Even Jake Brendel to a certain degree, albeit not as much as Alex Mack was, and really maybe shouldn't start next year. But they see Kyle Juszczyk as the Harvard grad, smart guy, another pair of quarterback-like eyes on the offense, right? And so the value he has really is immeasurable. But last year, you can tell he was pissed off. He was upset, took being asked to take a pay cut very personal. And I get that. Like, I get it's millions of dollars and all that stuff, but imagine someone coming to your job saying, hey, you're making $18 an hour. Can you make $16? If you don't, we're going to fire you. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And again, I get it's the NFL, it's different, but you can look at that as kind of the personal attack, and I think Juszczyk took it that way to a certain extent, albeit was happy to stay in San Francisco last year. I do think that, with the way the NFL is going, the way John Lynch talked about, wanting to get younger, you start looking at those higher aged players, Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, now Deebo Samuel. You start to have serious conversations as to, does their age, their salary, and what they're getting, their cap hit equal their actual value? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. And I think the Niners may view this draft class, with how deep it is at tight end, of the, we can find the next Kyle Juszczyk in this year's class. And I'd push back on that somewhat. However, when you listen to what, John Lynch said yesterday, and I quote here, Juice is a great player, and he's been really valuable to us, so he's part of us. We'll see, though. We're thinking of a lot of things right now. We're trying to make everything work in some tighter constraints than we've had in the past. Now, when you hear that, some tighter constraints than we've had in the past, that, although doesn't make me think of, wholesale changes, it does make me, again, look to the fringes, the oldest guys, maybe positions that aren't highly valued. And fullback in the NFL is certainly seen that way, and I do think that maybe there are some players out there that, during the draft could be seen as the next Kyle Juszczyk. I posted one last night on X, if I can find it for you really fast, because, what Lynch said was not really shocking, knowing, again, they asked him to take a pay cut last year. It was just like, okay, I thought we were past this. But Georgia tight end Benjamin Juszczyk, I think, could be a really good fit for San Francisco. He essentially is a Swiss Army knife as well. The production as a receiver isn't there, but if you look at how San Francisco uses Kyle Juszczyk, not really an important factor in regards to how they use him, but he can be the H-back, he can be your inline tight end, he can be your fullback. I think he fits what they want to do. And I think, from a fan standpoint, and a rather stupid comment here, it's a lot easier to go from Kyle Juszczyk to Benjamin Juszczyk, and you go from Juice to Use really quickly. It doesn't sound too different, and you move on and say, oh, that sucks, but we have Juszczyk, and, so, you can make some comparisons there and be kind of done with it and fun with it, but I do think that, kind of like Jordan Mason, and San Francisco wanted to kind of cut off the dead weight, if you will, which is a pretty harsh comment to make, but I think it's true here, that they may view Kyle Juszczyk as a player that you want to have, you like to have, but really isn't a need to have, and I think they may see him as replaceable, although I don't really know which teams would want to sign Kyle Juszczyk. Maybe the Ravens, maybe the Cowboys. He's a great player, really great player, and he said he wants to stay in San Francisco, but he did say at the end of last year that this could be it. I'm aware of that, but I'm going to play next year no matter what. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Kyle Juszczyk. I think he should stay. I hope he stays, but their comments certainly make it seem very, very different. Very different as to what maybe I view them, or the importance of Kyle Juszczyk in the offense. I do want to get to Deebo Samuel here, because yesterday we got some updates on, John Lynch saying that they're going to try to honor Deebo Samuel's trade request, but we got two reports yesterday that, one, the Houston Texans, which we kind of already covered earlier this week, that the Texans are interested in acquiring Deebo Samuel. Now, whether it's via trade or through free agency, they didn't go, D'Amico Ryans didn't say which one, but they are certainly interested in signing or acquiring Deebo Samuel, so maybe the Houston Texans become a trade partner for them. They're going to lose Stephon Diggs. They're not going to have Tank Dell. They had Nico Collins. Deebo Samuel is a great underneath receiver. Can make some sense for them. But we also got a team that is saying we do not want to trade for Deebo Samuel this offseason, that being the Denver Broncos, which, if you know what Deebo Samuel was doing on his podcast just before, maybe just after the Super Bowl, the Denver Broncos telling him no is just so ironic and so funny, because on his podcast, again, earlier this month, he was talking about how, the Denver Broncos may be so good they can make some noise. He was liking and posting photos of himself wearing Denver Broncos jerseys on social media, and the Broncos said, "We don't want you, man," which is just so funny, but I also think it shows you that, albeit Denver may have not been one of the top contenders for Deebo, I do think it shows you that I don't think many teams are actually vying for Deebo Samuel, despite what John Lynch said yesterday when it comes to quote-unquote significant interest in the veteran receiver. But it is pretty funny. Denver said, no, we are not going to be trading for Deebo Samuel this offseason, which, again, I don't think his value is very high, nor do I believe that that any team would be like, yeah, we'll give you whatever you want for Debo. I think he'll be an eventual release victim in the next few weeks or so. I want to get on to one of the interesting reports that came out yesterday in regards to the San Francisco 49ers free agency plan. A lot of people want to know, what's the plan? Who are you going to pay? What position group do you value in free agency? And I do want to preface this by saying who the report comes from doesn't always mean it's valid, because yesterday, Sportskeeda's Tony Pauline, who has been around for a very long time, reported that the San Francisco 49ers will look to sign an offensive lineman, a cornerback, and possibly a wide receiver in free agency. Now, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, duh. What else are they going to try to do? It also didn't say it was like a premier offensive lineman or a premier wide receiver or this, that, and the other. It was very much just like, they want to get one of those. And it's like, you're saying a lot without saying, or excuse me, you're saying not a lot by saying a lot. And so, let's play the game for a second here. Let's assume that Tony Pauline is correct, which maybe he is. I know last year he was one of the first people that said San Francisco was high on Isaac Guerendo, which came to be true. I know at the time I was preaching, hey, Niners, Guerendo, perfect match made in heaven. That came to be true as well. But so there is some mixed reporting on his behalf. He was talking about the Godfather offer, the Godfather offer from the Jets for Deebo Samuel, which ended up being nothing really. So there is some mixed reporting there. And so just keep that in mind as we talk about Tony Pauline's report from last night via the NFL Scouting Combine and what he's hearing. So let's play the game now. He said offensive lineman, a cornerback, and wide receiver possibly. So let's talk about some potential options at each position this team could sign in free agency, which wide receiver will lead us into one of our last topics of today's show, but we'll get there when we get there in the next few minutes or so. So offensive lineman.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
I think there's been comments in every single show I do, every single podcast out there has one of these comments like this, and I think it's one you'll hear the entire offseason, and I think there's a reason for it. If I can find it here by Niner Media, boom. Drew Dahlman. Dahlman is realistic. Joseph Ehrenberg says here, the idea of getting someone like Max Miles is a fever dream. I think you mean Maxx Crosby. But Drew Dahlman isn't realistic anymore. I push back on that. I do think San Francisco, Drew Dahlman has ties to San Francisco. I think that, his father played here. He's a Bay Area guy. San Francisco likely wants a center, depending on the asking price. So Drew Dahlman makes some sense. But let's say San Francisco doesn't want a center. They like Nick Zakelj. They like Jake Brendel. They're also paying him a relatively nice chunk of change. So it could make them say, let's not cut Jake Brendel or bench him, for that matter. I know last year Chris Forrester was like, Brendel's the best. And it's like, I think he's the worst, actually. He's not very good at all. But San Francisco obviously values Brendel at a much higher clip than myself or others do. But let's say they want to go interior, but not center. I think former Bears second-round pick Tevin Jenkins makes a lot of sense for this team. I think Bleacher Report had them kind of connected to him early in the offseason, albeit Bleacher Report is much, not the biggest. I wouldn't trust them too much. They toss things at the wall and say, oh, it's stuck, look at us. And it's like, well, I mean, not really, but second round pick 39 in 2021. You look at last year, what he did for the Bears, a 75.8 pass blocking grade, a 74.3 run blocking grade. He's been one of the more stout blockers in football as a left guard, as a right guard, primarily a left guard though for the Bears. He's a free agent this year. You look at last year, only 4 sacks allowed, really efficient. You talk about getting and improving your offensive line. I know we're talking about Ben Barch being this team's left guard next year. If they wanted to spend some money, I could see Tevin Jenkins certainly being a fit for this team. On the lower end of things, one player I think every fan would be okay bringing back, that being Daniel Brunskill could be one. A veteran swing tackle guard option. Just kind of be that John Feliciano for you. I know we always talk about, Kyle loving former players. He had Daniel, I think, with the Falcons, and now San Francisco. Now he was in Tennessee, and maybe Kyle says, hey, for 1 year, come back and kind of lift our floor of the offensive line. Then there's James Daniels, former Steelers offensive lineman. He certainly isn't the biggest name on the open market, but when you go back to last year during a lot of what the Brandon Ayuk saga became in regards to what they can offer, what they can get back for him from the Pittsburgh Steelers, James Daniel was one of the bigger ones. He plays right guard, so you likely mean you're moving him or moving Pooney over to left guard. But like Tevin Jenkins, former second-round pick, the exact same selection, pick 39, albeit a couple years older. Only played 4 games last year. He got hurt, but in previous years, pretty good run defender, in the 70s, in the 60s in regards to his run blocking grade. Last year was tremendous in his 4 games, a 92.5, albeit again he had the injury. Then the pass blocking grade, it wasn't great last year, albeit 66.5 and been around the 70s more throughout his career. He allowed 1 sack last year. 2023, he allowed 1 sack. In 2022, he allowed 0 sacks. He played 3 consecutive years of 1,000 snaps. So looking at a pretty durable player that can play the outside, he can play right tackle, he can play guard, could be an option out there for San Francisco and really shouldn't be too expensive. So maybe a few names to keep an eye on during the free agency period to maybe say, hey, this guy makes some sense for San Francisco. But let's move on to cornerbacks for a second, because cornerbacks have been, at least in my opinion, like the last position I would want to sign or trade for or acquire. Whenever I see, Will Johnson going to San Francisco in the first round, I'm like, seriously? Why? I don't get it. I also don't think San Francisco is going to pay up for one. They have Green. They paid Lenore last year, but let's play the game for a second. You have DJ Reed, who obviously makes sense, solid connection with the Jets in San Francisco when he was first here, when he got drafted. You have Carlton Davis, who I think a lot of people like. You'd poach him from the Lions, which would always be a good thing. You hurt your enemy and help yourself. But I think San Francisco wants to be cheap there. They'll probably draft a guy. But I think you're looking at players more like Asante Samuel Jr., who I talked about either last week or earlier this week. He can make some sense on a 1-year deal. You have Mike Hilton, former Bengal, former Steeler. He can also make some sense, has the NFC or the AFC North kind of mindset. They can play nickel, they can play outside, a really good cornerback, a good tackler. He could also make some sense. I think in 2021, they were connected to him in some way, but nothing happened for them. Then the final guy, who I think may get paid a little less than DJ Reed and Carlton Davis, but a little more than Hilton and Asante Samuel, could be Paulson Adebo from the Saints. I'm not sure what the Saints' plan is. They are in cap hell and have been for a long time. But I think Paulson Adebo is a darn good football player. He can play outside. He can be in man coverage, be in zone coverage. I think he'd be a tremendous player to get, albeit if you got him, Lenore probably becomes your nickel back, and against bigger nickels, Green slides inside. So it does give you some flexibility, albeit he can only play outside. And funny enough, it'd be the second straight Saints cornerback they signed to be their third starter. with last year being Isaac Yiadom, but that brings us to wide receiver. And I want to combine a conversation that John Lynch talked about, because last night on the Niner Talk podcast, he had a very interesting quote. And I quote here, John Lynch said the team has work to do at the wide receiver position. Now, he did credit Brandon Ayuk, saying he's working his tail off, been at the team facility, trying to get rehab done to get healthy, but the odds are he comes back in the first 2 months of the year very slim, and you don't know what he'll be when he does come back. But Lynch also gave credit to Cowing, saying, hey, got to step up. We hope he steps up next year. So maybe there is some hope that San Francisco can find some in-house options to be credible receivers for them next year. Looking at the roster, once Debo goes and with Ayuk on the shelf for a few months, your only really healthy contributors are Ricky Pearsall, who you like, first-round pick, Juwan Jennings, who obviously you love, but really isn't the number one option, really maybe not a number two. You'd rather have him be that big slot for you, albeit he had the near 1,000-yard season this past year. You have Cowing. I'm going to assume they're going to try to bring back Chris Conley. They have Trent Taylor, which means nothing. He's a vibes guy only. You signed Russell Gage. You have Isaiah Hodgins, which those guys are probably camp bodies. You have Tariq Owens, which could be something in year two, but he was hurt last year, then got brought back. And, those guys are kind of the practice squad fill-in guys for you if someone goes down. So San Francisco really only has 3 legitimate healthy options at the receiver position. So when you hear they have work to do, that can take your mind in a lot of different places, whether it's T. Higgins or Devontae Adams, which maybe those things come to fruition, albeit T. Higgins got tagged, so probably not going to happen. Devontae Adams could certainly be on the table. Again, the price tag may be too high, though. But I think that when you look at what San Francisco is doing on the cornerback position, I think a lot of that translates to the receiver position. I don't think they want to tie themselves to older players. I don't think they want to get into multi-year contracts with older players with high-end money. I think they would be okay with the 1-year deal for a player in his 30s, but I do think they want to stick to a guy that's 27, that's 28, that can give you 2 or 3 years of their prime and still be on your team in 2026, maybe even beyond if all things go well. But I do want to give you a handful of options here that are cheaper than your Adams, your Higgins, your Keenan Allens, and whatnot, your Amari Coopers, because I don't think those guys are really viable options for them in free agency. I'm looking at guys like Brandon Cooks, who is a shorter guy. He's in his 30s, mind you. Probably going to get a 1-year deal. Market value is around $6 million. But when he's healthy, really good Saint, really good Ram, really good Patriot, knows the offense very well under McVay with the Rams. On the Cowboys the last couple of years, when he's healthy, really good player, can give you something, but again, is kind of that lower end number 2, high end number 3, which may be what San Francisco is banking on if Pearsall starts to grow and progress to what he should be as a first-round pick. You like Jennings, you have Kittle, but let's say Cooks, not really your cup of tea. Maybe a player like Robert Woods could make some sense. Again, 30s, like Brandon Cooks, but good run blocker, although not much of a pass game contributor anymore due to his age and injuries. But again, knows the offense under McVay a couple years back with the Rams, so there is some consistency there with Woods and Cooks knowing the offense, but again, maybe too old for San Francisco's liking. I do think there are 2 names that could fit San Francisco that I think would fit in here pretty great, although one of them has character concerns that are kind of scary. That player being Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, former Jets draft pick, was a highly touted receiver with the Jets, and just everything fell apart. He got suspended last year for character issues. Nothing like assault-wise, just like being kind of a pain in the ass, if you will, and not following directions, which may piss off Kyle, but I can see higher upside, younger player, needs to kind of revitalize his career, get into San Francisco for 1, maybe 2 years. Maybe you can find something there. I can see him being a slot guy. I can see him kind of getting his head on straight. And Kyle, he is hard on receivers. The minute Moore messes up, he's in his face in the doghouse, which may be a reason as to why you don't sign him. Could make it worse for Elijah Moore's career, but I do think the upside and the asking price is worth taking a chance on, especially knowing you don't really have anybody else in that room. And he also wouldn't be one that has to overshadow Pearsall Jennings. And maybe if Cowling plays great, Cowling as well, he'd fit in there in regards to skill sets pretty good. The last one is, and funny enough, a player that was often connected to Brandon Ayuk in trade talks last year, that being Dyami Brown from the Washington Commanders. If you watched Dyami Brown last year, he was really good. I think you look at what he did. His early career was very bumpy. Didn't really have much to glean from. There really wasn't much to like there from him. But last year with the Commanders and Jaden Daniels, albeit I think they want to bring him back, he really exploded last year for them. Former third-round pick in 2021. You look at his stats. Off the top of my head, I see if I can find him here for a second. Get off the blocking on PFF. That'd be a good idea. See if I can find it here for you. No, that's not it. But again, still a good player, super explosive, really, really good route runner. He'll get open for you. Last year for the Commanders, he had 2 touchdowns, 537 receiving yards, and 44 receptions. Obviously his best year. Doesn't drop the football. He's a good pass blocker. He's someone that wants to get out there. He'll put a body on someone. He is someone to like. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. And you can argue maybe it's the right time to get a player like that. He's super explosive. His yards per reception per year has gone from 13.8 to 28.6 to 14 to 12.2. He can play slot. He can play out wide. He can do really everything for you. He had 321 yards a yak last year, which compared to, percentages-wise, 537 yards when 321 of those are yak. A lot to like there from Dyami Brown. I think could be a good idea for them. But again, asking price matters. I don't think he'll be as expensive as people think again. But I do think the trajectory is going up for him, which could be a good idea as to why San Francisco may want to get him in this year's free agency class. Before we move on, though, I do want to let you know that if you want to perform like the GOAT Jerry Rice, then you got to get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Whether you're an athlete or a podcaster like myself out there doing your 9 to 5, GOAT Fuel can bring the best out of every single one of us and those coffee drinkers out there. GOAT Fuel is a healthy coffee alternative. Click that link down below in the description and grab yourself a can of GOAT Fuel to feel like the greatest of all time and save yourself 10% off on your purchase. Okay. I do want to cover this very quickly to end today's show because I don't think we talked about it enough yesterday. I think that when we talked about what John Lynch had to say about Brandon Ayuk's recovery, we talked about, how he responded. He shut down the rumors and said trades happen all the time around this year. Conversations are not happening with him whatsoever. Teams have called, but there is no real truth to that. But I do want to recover what he said, because when talking about Brandon Ayuk's recovery, he said this: at some point, you have to reset a little bit, or at least recalibrate. You can't just keep pressing the pedal. And I think there's some good that can come out of that. We need to get younger. I think we are the oldest team in football, trying to make a run at the deal last year. And I think it's good to constantly get younger. He continues here. Our draft class last year was a great move towards that. We'll have 4 picks in the top 100 this year. If the comp picks happen like we see it, it's always a calculation. We'll have 10 picks overall, and we're excited to add more youth to a great core of players we already have. Okay. When you hear in that first paragraph, You can't just keep pressing the pedal. Right there. That almost directly, spits in the face of what Kawakami reported today. Of the NFL views them as, contenders, destinations for these top edge rushers, Hendrickson, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, Maxx Crosby. But when John Lynch says, you just can't keep pressing the pedal, that to me screams no big end deals. We're going to pay our guys. We are not going to be out there and pay for big name free agents or no big money free agents. Big names, different, big money, that's going to be a no. This is a clear statement of recalibration. They view this year as, yes, they want to be competitive. Yes, they want to go out there and win the whole thing. But you just can't keep pressing the pedal. ... We need to get younger. ... I think we're the oldest team in the league. ... Our draft class last year was a great move towards getting younger. ... Everything he's saying, even the first sentence, you have to reset a little bit. You have to recalibrate. What does that tell you? 2025, well, yes, they want to compete. They want to be competitive. They believe in this roster and its core. I believe the San Francisco 49ers do not view this year as an all-in type of year. Yes, again, they want to go out there and win games, and they'll try to, and they have a good enough team to go out there and make some hay. But when you hear recalibrate and retool, you don't use those words lightly. We have the rebuild word that everyone gets scared. Oh crap, rebuild. He didn't use those. He didn't say we're tearing things down. Retool, recalibrate. This is a retooling year for the San Francisco 49ers. The team that we've come to know that gets Javon Hargrave, that trades for Chase Young, that goes and gets Randy Gregory, and goes and gets Emmanuel Sanders, and makes these balls to the walls, crazy all-in deals and moves. That ain't happening this offseason.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
So when you hear Myles Garrett and Maxx Crosby, I would love to make those deals. They're not happening. Unless the heavens fall. You're like, oh my God. That's not happening. John Lynch bluntly and clearly, in a very passive way, said, we are not going to go out there and pay for the top-of-the-line free agent, big money deals. T. Higgins, no. Devontae Adams, no. Maxx Crosby, no. Myles Garrett, no. We're going to go out there. We are going to insulate ourselves, get into our room, try to ace this draft class, bring our guys back, and hope they can carry us. Yes, be competitive, but we've been kind of throwing money at the wall, hoping it works, and they've made some really good moves, some really bad moves, and they got to kind of, take their foot off the gas to a certain degree. And I think this year, I myself, when I drive, I got a heavy foot. I have gotten 2 speeding tickets. I was going from SoCal to Northern California in college for Christmas. I was driving 120 miles an hour at 4 a.m. trying to get home. I got the whoop, here come the sirens. I was like, oh crap. The cop was thankfully very kind to me, didn't put me in handcuffs, and said, Merry Christmas, here's your $600 fine, and get on with yourself. But that's what San Francisco was doing. They were 120 miles an hour. We see the Super Bowl in sight. We got to get it. We got to do anything we can to get there as fast as possible. And they got there twice. Didn't get it done. They are like, okay, let's slow things down. Let's enjoy the scenery. Let's not miss anything. Because sometimes you go too fast, you miss something. You miss moments, right? It's like the movie Click. He's fast-forwarding too much, and he misses his entire life. And he's like, oh crap, what did I do? San Francisco needs to wake up from that dream, realize they're in a Bed Bath & Beyond, and say, hey, we got to rethink how we do things out here in San Francisco. And I think right there we are going to see a very much Rams 2023, where they have an incredible draft class that year, an incredible draft class last year, Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk. They said, look, we're not going to be big-name players, but we're going to go out there, we're going to draft really well, and those players, if you hit, can carry you to new heights, like the Rams last year, and make you competitive and make you more dangerous in the NFC West. But look at the Rams now. May trade Stafford, although I don't think it'll happen, but Cooper Kupp's gone. Matthew Stafford might be gone. They're letting bigger money guys on the trade market and test their market out there. We are inching closer to that, I think, for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I don't think it'll be that drastic. They're going to pay Brock Purdy. They have Christian McCaffrey. But this is a retooling year. They got 10 picks. They value those 10 picks. They're going to sign some lower-name guys, fill some roles, but not get too ballsy. They'll be competitive, but they're not going to get too crazy. They're going to go out there, insulate their roster, hope to hit on some guys, view this year as the recalibration, and in 2026, that may be the all-in year. Because look, next year, next offseason, they ain't got much cap space. I think they view this as, can Pearsall progress? Can we get Juwan Jennings tied back up into a contract? How healthy is CMC? How healthy is Trent Williams? Where do we go there? Dre Greenlaw may have to go. Can you bank on, although they want to bring him back, you can't bank on that for 2 or 3 years. 1-year deal, incentive-based. Let's not tie ourselves to older, injured players. Let's be smart here. Let's try to raise the floor. It all goes back. It all ties together. Like poetry, like Star Wars used to be, it's a circle, a la George Lucas used to say during the behind-the-scenes documentaries of Revenge of the Sith. I'm a nerd, I'm sorry. But it's like a circle. It's an iceberg, right? You got all these stars. You got your high-end money, your top-of-the-line guys. Man, you got no depth. You got no, in an odd way to say, girth. You ain't got no density to you. The Niners need to get some density to their roster. And I think John Lynch is just point-blank telling you right there what he means. 2025 is not the year we are going all in. This is a year to reset, to recalibrate, to retool, to get younger. We're not paying for top-of-the-line guys. We're going to hopefully build from within, strengthen our roster, get dense, build our depth, and hope to find some stars along the way that can be that next core. Last year was the beginning of that. They hit multiple times, and this year they want to continue that thread of luck in this year's draft, and hopefully, fingers crossed, and also free agency. But tell me down below, when you hear John Lynch use the words recalibration and retool and reset, what do you think? To me, it says we're not going all in. We're not going all in this year. But they want to stay competitive. They believe in Fred and CMC and Trent and Ayuk and Kittle, that they have the stars to be competitive, but this is not going to be the same mentality they had. Expect some hard changes to make. Maybe it's Kyle Juszczyk. Maybe it's Jordan Mason. Maybe it's Deebo Samuel. You're going to see this wave of stars eventually be told to leave, or they're going to get re-signed to stick around. But going to have some hard goodbyes, some thankful re-welcomings back to the roster, but you are not going to see the same San Francisco 49ers mentality-wise in 2025. Tell me down below what you think when you hear John Lynch use those words, retool, recalibrate, and reset. Also, what do you think San Francisco should do with Kyle Juszczyk? Let him go? Keep him on the roster? Ask him to take a pay cut? You never know. What about Jordan Mason? Tender him? Let him walk? What do you do with him? And do you believe Tim Kawakami's report when he says the San Francisco 49ers are a top potential destination for multiple top-of-the-line edge rushers on the free agency and trade market? Tell me down below what you think. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X, or Twitter, 49ers.access is the Instagram. Use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Also, get yourself a can of goat fuel down below and save yourself 10% off your purchase of some goat fuel. As always, my name is Sterling Bennett. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Give us that 5-star review. Thank you to Kawachipto, Historic Stoic, Tommy Huxley, many more in the YouTube comments. JD Durham, Bobo, Keys, Niners First Takes, Joseph Ernberg, Niner Media. Thank you so much. Until next time, as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.